What up people, welcome back to another video. I'm very excited for this video because I get to talk about the Nikon Z8. My journey with Nikon actually started many years ago when I first got into photography and I picked up the Nikon D3100. It was a really good camera and I liked the images and the sensor that it had, and I slowly upgraded and went to the Nikon D3300. As I grew professionally, I needed a really good hybrid camera, and at the top end, Nikon was really good for photos, but in the video department, they quite didn't get it, especially when it came to autofocus. And so I made my switch to Panasonic, and then I eventually made my switch to Sony. And then at some point I picked up all of the camera brands so that I didn't have any gear acquisition syndrome. Anyways, coming back to present day, Nikon has been struggling compared to the two market leaders, which are Canon and Sony. You see, with the mirrorless revolution, Canon and Sony have cornered the market because of the great features they added to their bodies, as well as good autofocus. Nikon has always made good cameras, and their sensors are really good, and they produce good colors. But in terms of their autofocus technology and some of the features that they offer, they haven't always been the greatest. A couple years ago, Nikon came out with the Nikon Z9, and it was a true flagship by all accounts. It came with amazing features and really good autofocus, and it brought a lot of former Nikon enthusiasts back into the system. The one problem with the Nikon Z9, however, was big and bulky, and it cost a lot of money. So, Nikon Z8, you can think of it as the little sister to the Nikon Z9 because essentially it's the exact same camera with a smaller body and a cheaper price. And so I was very excited to take it out to Caribana. Every year in the city of Toronto, in the first weekend of August, there's a carnival called Caribana. It brings thousands of people from all over the world to celebrate Caribbean culture. What it entails is essentially people from all walks of life dress up in masquerade costumes, and they come and party in the streets and walk a parade and dance to soca music and dance hall. While this is not a review, I'm going to quickly go over some notable specs. Number one, it's got a 45 megapixel backside illuminated stacked sensor. What this means is that the readout speed is so fast that it does not even include a mechanical shutter, and it's able to shoot at 20 frames per second. Number two, the other advantage of not having a mechanical shutter is there is less wear and tear because there's less moving parts inside the camera, which means theoretically the camera should be able to shoot for much longer and have a much longer lifespan than other cameras that have a mechanical shutter. In regards to video, the most notable specs are it can shoot up to 8K video, 30 frames per second, internally, and raw video, which is completely unheard of in these little mirrorless cameras. This parade would be the perfect environment to test the capabilities of the Z8. What I was most interested in was to see how the autofocus worked and if Nikon has finally caught up to the market leaders, Canon and Sony. So let's get into this video.
DJ Blaze, in my top and top. God for the exact top. DJ plays in my top of the top. God creates a top.
I don't think you could manage all that, baby.
So I take a little drink, and I go do what I want. And I go whine if I feel like, and I go live how I want. Hey, so I go take a little drink, and I go do what I want. And I go whine if I feel like, and I go live how I want. Angle me, angle me, angle me. What I get da thing. Angle me, angle me, angle me. Have a little money in my pocket 'cause I just got paid. I could do it a little more, but I'm still irate. So now I'm stepping out to a party. Trouble when I link up with my friends and family. Man, anywhere we go, we mash it up. We rip it up, we mash it up. Girl, them a fi bubble and them a fi back it up. Everybody see we and they say we acting up. We just living, mash it up. We rip it up, we mash it up. Girl, them a fi bubble and them a fi back it up. Everybody see we and they say we acting up. So I'm gonna take a little drink.
When I was shooting for Caribana, this camera performed beyond my expectations. The autofocus system has finally caught up to the speed of Canon and Sony. Once again, the autofocus system has caught up to the speed of Canon and Sony. However, there's a caveat. Notice how I said speed. Yes, it is very fast, but it's not as intelligent as Sony and Nikon. Here's what I mean. When you use a Sony camera, especially one of the latest models in the latest generation, or one of the Canon cameras, what you notice about the autofocus system is that it's very intelligent. It kind of reads your mind and can tell what you're trying to focus on and intelligently keeps focus on that subject. With the Nikon, however, it doesn't behave that way. There are lots of different autofocus modes, and what I've noticed is that for whatever student situation that you're in, you're going to have to find the perfect mode to put the Nikon Z8 into so that it can keep track with that specific subject. So once again, what I'm saying is it is very fast, just as fast as Canon and Sony, but you are going to have to add a lot more user input in selecting the right focus mode so that it can keep up with the subject. Whereas with Sony and Canon, all you got to do is point the camera at the subject that you want to focus on, and for some odd reason, Sony and Canon is intelligent enough to pick that subject out correctly and keep track of that subject. With that said, most of the time, I would say 99% of the time, I was able to keep focus on the subject that I really wanted to shoot. And when I was not able to do that, you could quickly tap on the screen or use the joystick to get focused on the person that I was looking to shoot. So I don't really have a major complaint, but what I would say is that it's not there yet, but it's 99% of the way. And I think that that should not be a deterrent to getting this camera.
I want it to be my girl. So baby, take a chance on me, and I can guarantee. But don't make me pay for your X games. Don't make me pay for your X games. But don't make me pay for your X games. You see all that baggage? Drop it.
DJ plays in my top of the top.
I want you drop
God creates a top.
drop it like down. Baby, I want to make you happy.
The other aspect of this camera that I was really impressed with was the colors. Yes, the sensor is made by Sony. However, Nikon makes whatever tweaks it makes to its sensors that it gets from Sony, and the colors coming straight out of the camera are some of the best that I've ever seen. They're akin to the GFX files that I get from my medium format camera. They're really, really that good, and the photos that you see here have had very, very minimal editing.
Yes, only took it. Oh, yeah. Bubble. Well, she need bubble, a trouble.
I told her I want to catch her eyes just to take my breath. She said, baby, big mistake. You just come and me no start yet. All night. Body.
When we talk color science, when it comes to rankings, I would say Fuji GFX and Nikon come in first place, and then Canon, and then Sony for me. But again, if you shoot in RAW, this conversation does not matter at all because you can modify the pictures to whatever you want them to look like. I just mean that, again, straight out of camera, I prefer GFX Fuji and Nikon first, Canon second, Sony third. With that being said, overall this camera performed exactly the way I needed it to perform, and I think that if you go through all of the capabilities of the Nikon Z8, it is actually currently the best mirrorless camera in the game. And I'm saying that point blank period. If you're looking for a hybrid camera that can do amazing video and amazing photos and get great quality right out of camera, I would say pick up the Nikon Z8. Are there any disadvantages of this camera? Obviously, yes. When it comes to disadvantages, the Nikon Z8 physically, while it is smaller than the Nikon Z9 that came before it, it's still a very big and heavy camera compared to a lot of the other mirrorless cameras that have downsized. So while I do like big cameras, I have gotten so used to the smaller size of Sony cameras that I found it a bit challenging to carry, especially for the entirety of the day. But again, this is a little nitpick and something that I can easily get over. And then secondly, the disadvantage that I talked about earlier is the autofocus system is not as intelligent as the big players. But again, this is not to say that it's bad. It's really, really good. It's just one step below Canon and Sony.
Even the bad man heart is open. So tell all the real brethren that you know the guy has one who riding for you. Don't wait till they come. No way. This is the time to appreciate. Don't hold back, don't procrastinate. Don't wait till they come. Look somebody in the face. Please don't wait. Tell them straight. Tell them straight. I love you. I'm not afraid to shout it. I'm not afraid to shout it. Oh, na na na. I love you, yeah. And there is no shame about it. So I'm not afraid to shout it. Say, na na na.
DJ Blaze, in my top and top. God Blaze attack.
Big man thing if you're talking love, if that's, and if you're preaching peace, if that's.
So there you go. This is my thoughts on the Nikon Z8. It performed exactly the way I needed it to perform, and the disadvantages are not a deal breaker at all. I'm considering selling some of my gear to pick up the Nikon Z8 because it is the perfect hybrid camera for those who are looking for great video capabilities and great photo capabilities. You cannot go wrong with Nikon, and I'm very happy to say Nikon is definitely back in the game. Now, if you came for this review, I hope you're well informed after this video, but at least if you did not enjoy that content, I hope you at least enjoyed the visuals. It took a lot of work to make this video, so please give this video a thumbs up and subscribe for more content like this. I'll see you in the next video. Take care.